Damage.
Oh, okay.
All right. You saw the moon? You saw the rabbit?
Yes.
Honestly, there's so many different versions of that rabbit. That's what I see. I've seen there's some pictures, people seeing totally different rabbits, like rabbits working in the garden and stuff. I don't see that. Yeah. All right. Anyway, just a sec. I'm just looking for something. Let's continue with mind in Tibetan Buddhism, which is I think the clear version. Okay, anyway. All right, let's look at mind in Tibetan Buddhism. What page did we cover yesterday? I think it's the first page. I did read. Didn't I read the first page? Yes, I did. Definitely the first, but maybe not the entire second page.
We're on the second paragraph.
Second paragraph of the second page.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
Yes. All right. So that an inferential cognizer is incontrovertible. Incontrovertible means that it realizes its object. We know that it attains, gets at an object with respect to which superimpositions have been removed. It is a determinative knower. It is a conceiving mind. That is, it is a consciousness for which there is a sense it is such and such. Something that does not occur for sense consciousnesses or other direct perceivers. So this thinking about the thought process you only find, of course, in conceptual minds, and therefore a direct perceiver, an inferential cognizer is such a mind, but no direct perceiver is. Inferential cognizers are so called because of being inferring consciousnesses which arise in dependence on a correct sign. The definition of an inferential prime cognizer. Now here there's like this short explanation of inferential, valid cognizer. So the definition of an inferential valid cognizer is a conceiving awareness, a conception which, depending on its basis, a correct sign, a correct reason, is new and incontrovertible with regard to its object of comprehension, a hidden phenomenon. It is said that an inferential cognizer is not necessarily a valid cognizer. All right, that makes sense. Benjamin Daba would agree. Whatever is an inferential cognizer is not necessarily a prime valid cognizer. Thus, in this text, there's a distinction between inferential cognizer and inferential valid cognizer. Then there are other texts. There's some disagreements. For instance, Purpojok's awareness and knowledge. So Purpojok, as you probably know, he lived around the 19th century. Purpojok Jambagyatso is his full name, yeah. Apparently he was a tutor to the 13th Dalai Lama. He composed a text on collected topics as well as on Lorig. So in his Lorig text, he says he doesn't distinguish between an inferential valid cognizer and an inferential cognizer. In other words, he does not believe, or he does not hold, that there are three possibilities between the two, in that, for instance, Benjamin Daba would say an inferential cognizer, although it's necessarily an inferential prime cognizer, although it's necessarily an inferential cognizer, it's not the case the other way around, because there are inferential subsequent cognizers. However, according to him, that is not the case. Okay, so because Purpojok asserts that all inferential cognizers are prime, he does not, or valid, I guess he would say, valid. Here the word valid doesn't work. So prime are like newly realizing minds. He does not accept a common locus of a subsequent cognizer and an inferential cognizer. All right, that's pretty clear, I guess. Yes.
Just with a small clarification, I never understood the importance of the newly. Why is that of any importance?
In the Sautrantika school, well, of course, in the Sautrantika and all the other schools except the Prasangika school, yes, they talk about that first moment. I suppose, and here again, you get different explanations from different teachers. Um, I I agree with the one of the explanations that I've received. There's this sense of like freshness and newness. It's just when you know something for the first time, um, there's more of a force behind it. The rest just, like domino stones kind of falling over after the first push. So in a sense, I guess also when they discuss in Buddhism in the Zen tradition, they say it's important to generate a beginner's mind. So everything you do, kind of like for the first time, you do it better. There's a lot of emphasis on that. Though here, beginner's mind, it's of course not emphasized in the sense that you have a beginner's knowledge, but it's that first moment which has a special kind of force to it or a special quality to it. Let's put it that way. So that very first moment. Just as when we do our practice, for instance, we should practice as if we were to do it for the first time to bring in that freshness. I'm just drawing a comparison that may be a little bit stretched, but yeah, it reminds me of that, like that beginner's mind that you find stressed in the Zen tradition, for instance. I think that's the only reason. Yeah. And there must be some whole history behind it, because of course, if we think back at the time of the Buddha, when the Buddha taught these different tenet systems, it was not done in an organized fashion that he was like saying, okay, on Monday I'm going to talk about the Vaibhashika, on Tuesday, and so forth. But rather, philosophers. He met philosophers of different backgrounds. Uh, of course, before the Buddha started to teach, his disciples were all previously followers of the different philosophical schools. Well, the philosophers at least. Not everyone, but many of his disciples were followers of the different non-Buddhist Indian systems. And so when he encountered them, based on their predispositions, their interests, their understandings, he gave, for instance, teachings from the point of view of the Sautrantika school. And who knows? Like they very often, of course, they had already ideas of what valid cognition meant, of what there are different kinds of so the different classifications of valid cognizers that are not necessarily accepted in the Buddhist tradition. And I wouldn't be surprised that some of them had an understanding of that prime realization, thinking that was especially important. And the Buddha just went along with that, taught according to their needs and so forth. Of course, then eventually for them to be led to some of the higher schools. So I don't know really exactly the reason why the Buddha did so, but I usually when these questions arise, why did the Buddha teach such a system when it's not accepted by the highest school? Sometimes for us it seems so random because we don't have that same background disciples of the Buddha had 2,600 years ago. So usually I come to the conclusion, well, there must have been disciples of some of the non-Buddhist schools, and for them that was a effective way to understand this fully. Yeah. And again, if the Buddha were to come, or not again, I said that in the other class the other day, but if the Buddha came now, it would be very different. His teachings would be very different. The emphasis on certain things would be very different. I don't think the emphasis would be, I don't know, on prime and what else, like things that are existent also in the other schools. Um, the emphasis on, well, there's no self, that definitely there would be a lot of emphasis on that because it does exist in our society as well, or in our communities as well. But I can't, just off the top of my head, I can't think of something. But yeah, a lot of things are very much emphasized that we only understand if we study these other schools. If we study these other schools, we get a sense, oh, the Buddha spent so much time um, repeating that it's such and such. Oh, that's probably because it was held by this particular school. So historically, it all makes sense unless we know a little bit about the history or a little bit about these other schools. Okay. Yeah, so I'm just going quickly through Popojok's explanation, and then it goes on to say on page 77. Oh, Popojok's position, that's on at the end of 76. Popojok's position is also asserted by Jetsunbo Gyaltsen, the author of the textbooks for the Sarah J. College and Ganden Changse, whereas Benjin Sonon Dakpa, who is the textbook author of Drepung Losaling and Ganden Shatse, his assertions accord with our text. When this text says it is said that an inferential cognizer is not necessarily a prime cognizer, it is referring to him, Benjamin Daba. Anyway, they're just tiny differences, not that they don't really affect the meaning of anything. In fact, these different textbook authors, you'll find these different textbook authors uh, with regard to the different colleges of the three monasteries. So now there are 6 colleges left. There used to be more in Tibet, but now there are these 6 colleges, Sera Je, Sera Me, Drepung Losaling and Drepung Goma, as well as Ganden Shatse and Ganden Changse. So these are the 6 colleges, and they all have their particular textbook authors with some differences in their assertions, which is great, which is very helpful, because then you have a lot to debate on. To give you one example that is something that I found fascinating is, for instance, because I remember I told you I used to go down to the debate on Pramanavartika. I used to go down to when they had this winter debate thing. Whenever I had time, I attended that, and so sometimes officially with my classmates, but also sometimes when there was just time to do it. And I remember, for instance, there were certain things that were quite different in the other schools. So one thing was in Jetsun, or according to Jetsun Chugi Gyaltsen text, that is Sarah J., they say that even when a mind lies dormant, when it's not active, it's there. So they say that the mind is there at the time of, for instance, like right now in my continuum, anger lies dormant. There's no anger actively manifest in my continuum. You'd notice. Well, not necessarily. It could be so subtle that where I could pretend I'm not angry. But the point is, yeah, at this point right now, I'm not angry. So my anger lies dormant. And Benjamin Santaba would say, right now, there is no anger. Since it's not active, since it's not manifest, it's not there. But but Jason Shui Jensen would say, oh, but it's there because it lies dormant. It's still there. Yeah. So there's that difference, which is a little difficult. Like, is it there in the form of a consciousness? Is it there? Actually, Benjamin Sontaba would say it's there only in the form of seeds. So because it's there in the form of a seed, it's not there as a consciousness. But in the end, it doesn't matter. They're agreeing on the same thing. It's just the terminology is different. It's differently used. And there's definitely stuff to debate on, especially, I mean, different disagreements. And it's pretty, I mean, there are things that Benjamin Dopa says, and when we studied it, because the Institute of Buddhist Dialectics, all its teachers are from Drepung Losaling. So there's this connection because also the founder is from Drepung Losaling, and therefore, actually, the IBD was traditionally the School of Dialectics was traditionally part of the Dalai Lama's part of the Dalai Lama's institution. So he had his own dialectic school. And he also, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the present Dalai Lama, studied Panchen Sontapa's texts, though it was founded in exile by someone else, but it's actually under the under the patronage of the Dalai Lamas. And so, yeah, it's this particular text. Anyway, there's a whole history to it, not important. But the point is that there are things that Panchen Sonam says that I used to, when I studied, I used to defend them. But now I go, no, doesn't make sense. I say, okay, he said so, but to me, they don't necessarily makes sense, and there are other explanations that I prefer, but that's just what it is, a personal preference. All right. When this text says it is said that an inferential cognizer is not necessarily a prime cognizer, it is referring to Benson Daba. Okay, now come these three different types of inferential cognizers. Inference through belief, or inference through, what was it, reliable testimony? Was it reliable? Inference through popular convention, and inference through empirical facts, I think it was called, which is much better than power of the fact, though these are literal translations here in Mind in Tibetan Buddhism. This is a division of inferential cognizers by way of their entity. The definition of an inferential cognizer through belief or through reliable testimony is a conception or conceiving awareness which, depending on its basis or correct sign of reliable testimony, is incontrovertible with regard to its object of comprehension, a very hidden phenomenon. An illustration is the inferential consciousness which realizes that the scripture, from giving resources, from ethics, a happy migration, is incontrovertible with respect to the meaning indicated by it. Now, when you spell out this particular syllogism, so it reads from giving resources, from ethics, a happy migration. So take the subject, from giving resources from ethics, a happy migration. It is incontrovertible with respect to the meaning indicated by it, because of being a scripture free from the three contradictions. All right. Now, this is really a very difficult syllogism. I'm probably going to go through the three contradictions tomorrow, because I first want to go through the entire text, have all the information that is given here, and probably, or hopefully, it's a little easier then to understand these three contradictions. But it is debated a lot, and as I said yesterday, I don't fully comprehend this. It doesn't make sense to me. Let's put it that way. Parts of it don't make sense to me. First of all, let's read through what Lati Rinpoche then says. Thus, an inferential cognizer through reliable testimony is one, or through belief, is one which has at its basis a sign of such testimony, a sign that is believed in dependence on which one realizes a very hidden object of comprehension. So believed in, that's already like that you believe in it, that's just not enough, is it? I mean, you need to realize. So I don't know. I can't see the Tibetan here. I can't see. I don't have the original Tibetan text. It would be really helpful to know what Lati Rinpoche literally said here, because there's different ways of interpreting things. But just a sign that is believed in. With regard to the illustration or the example cited here, the scripture is saying that from engaging in giving, a person comes to have resources. So in general, yeah, from giving, resources are attained. A person comes to have resources. Of course, you could always say, well, even from robbing a bank, you can get resources. I mean, if you're not caught, if you're successful. So we're not saying actually that from stealing money, as a result of stealing money, you cannot gain money. There's a cause and effect relationship, but we wouldn't call it the karmic result of that particular action. I mean, I don't know. I guess even in Tibetan you would use that expression. You would emphasize, that it's not the karmic result of that action. So having robbed a bank in this lifetime, if I'm successful and no one catches me, then I may have, I don't know, $1 million sitting there under my mattress. And so probably wouldn't give it to the bank, I pay into the bank. So anyway, under my mattress. So that is the result of robbing the bank. It would be ridiculous to say it's not, but is it the karmic result of me robbing a bank? No, that wouldn't make sense. It would rather be I must have practiced generosity in my previous life. $1 million. Okay, so I was pretty generous at some point, or somehow the karma multiplied in a very effective way, so that now I reap the karmic result of that and the trigger was that bank robbery. So the thing is also like karma ripens only only as a result of other causes, which is a very important Buddhist principle. There is never a single result that arises just from a single cause. There are always many causes and conditions. For instance, if I have the karma to be killed in an airplane accident or an airplane crash, well, there better be airplanes. I mean, I'm not going to die, right? That karma is not going to ripen. Or if I've got the karma to be killed by a gun, then oh, at least someone needs to have a gun. Now, it's difficult to say, is karma that specific? Some karma may be, some karma may not be. But the point is, you also need the external circumstances for something to happen. Which is why, and as being German, this has always been a difficult, or in the beginning, this has been a difficult question for me to answer when people ask me about the Holocaust, karma and Holocaust. But after I studied a little bit, it became obvious, well, we all have the karma to die in a Holocaust. We all do. It's not like, oh, there are better people and worse people. I mean, we've existed since beginning this time. We've all pretty much created the worst karma there is, unless we've already, um, well, yeah. So that is still a true statement. Not unless we've all created pretty much the same karma, but some of us, some of you, may be more advanced when it comes to your practice. You've already purified some of the negativities. That's a possibility. But just in general, ordinary people have pretty much accumulated similar karma. But then there are other circumstances that lead to the certain triggers, if you like, that lead to for some people they are affected by Second World War and other people are not at that point, but then in other times, in other lifetimes. So it's not about someone being better or worse. I mean, we've accumulated any kind of negative karma that's possible countless times, and it's therefore important to understand the triggers. They lead to their ripening. So we could all die in a Holocaust, but of course you have to be, if you live, I don't know, in South Africa at that time, you wouldn't be affected by the Holocaust unless you left the country and traveled to Germany or somewhere in Europe. Anyway, so therefore it's not just karma. I mean, in the sense that our experiences, of course, are caused by karma, but there are many other causes and conditions as well, which is also why in the case of the bank robbery, you can actually, as a result of the bank robbery, which is just one cause, together with karma, experience the karmic result of having $1 million. Similarly, of course, just as any result is always the result of many causes and conditions, every cause gives rise to many results. There's never just a single one. So you don't have a single cause giving rise to a single result. You don't have a single cause giving rise to many results. You don't have many causes giving rise only to a single result. It's always many causes giving rise to many results. That is very much emphasized, especially when you study the beginning of Parchin. You'll learn about that. So, sorry, just a sec. Okay. Now, going back to this here, however, one does not need inference. Wait, just a second. Oh, one does not need inference through belief or through reliable testimony to realize that just through giving, resources are achieved. Okay. So how do you establish that? First debate. Take the subject, just the mere fact that from generosity, resources are achieved. it follows that's not a very hidden phenomenon. Pardon? Except, okay. It follows it's not a very hidden phenomenon. So it follows it is a slightly hidden phenomenon. Or it's one of the two, manifest or slightly hidden phenomenon. Except.
Yeah.
Right? So which one is it?
Slightly.
So obvious.
Obvious, yeah.
I wished it was. People would be much more generous. Right? It would be so much more. Because the problem is, what is the problem? Yeah, I think textual meant past life, right? Was that gesture? I thought you just, oh,
You go to the store and you give money
yeah.
and you
Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear that. Can you use the microphone, please?
No,
Oh, he's got.
you go to the store and you give money and you get stuff.
But not necessarily. That's the problem, especially in East Germany. In the past, in the past, I've got some friends who were born, who were raised in the. No, I'm kidding. I mean, of course, sometimes that happens, but sometimes you give money and it doesn't. It depends on what store you go into. So there's no pervasion, right? Or you don't. I mean, I've been cheated plenty of times. So anyway, I sometimes get stuff, of course. No, I'm kidding. But that in itself, there's no pervasion, first of all. And you don't know it's the karmic. Here we're talking about the karmic result from giving resources. We're not talking about just, I don't know, I give someone and they smile back, so I get well, it's not a resource, but or I change money. I get the equivalent back. I give 100 rupee and you get 250s back. I mean, no, that's cause and effect, yes, but that's not a karmic cause and a karmic effect. Here we're talking in particular about karmic causes and karmic effects, and the difficulty is that, of course, it may go over lifetimes. So how am I going to observe this? Oh, right, this person, when they were whoever, John, now gets something back as a resource in the form of Emily or whatever. Very difficult. Again, so how one does not need inference through belief. Okay, so either it's slightly hidden. So what's the correct reason? Take the subject. So yeah, therefore, what's the correct reason that establishes that? However, one does not need inference through belief or through testimony to realize, reliable testimony, that through giving resources are achieved. Well, this is not a very hidden phenomenon to realize the very hidden phenomenon. So this is not a very hidden phenomenon. Okay. That's already one debate. Not very hidden. Let's say slightly hidden. To realize the very hidden phenomena, such as the specific action of giving, its entity, its object, the giver, the time of giving, and so forth involved in the arising of a specific resource, one needs inference through belief. So just by hearing that in general from that particular scripture, from giving resources, I can infer that a specific resource or that a specific object, where is it? A specific action of giving, its entity, its object, the giver, the time of giving, and so forth, that they were involved in the arising of a specific resource. So in other words, the fact that you own a laptop, for instance, or whatever else you own, so let's say a laptop, it follows that you can, based on that scripture, infer the scripture, which is saying from giving resources, you can come to know what are the exact causes. What was the action of giving? What was the giver at the time, and so forth, right? So how does that even work? How is that going to, this very general statement, although
Sorry,
it's
but
reliable, yes.
is it just from the statement, or is there a scripture like associated with it that says more things, or is it just that statement?
It's just that statement. I mean, here it's a reliable statement. That's from the Precious Garland. It's a statement from the Precious Garland from Arya Nagarjuna.
I see.
So yeah, so that's the kaza. I have to look it up. Yeah, as far as I know, it's not even a statement from the Buddha himself, but it's definitely also found in the sutras, I'm pretty sure. But I'm more familiar with it from the Precious Garland. Just to make sure I'm not telling you something that's not right. It's definitely found in there. Jimbalonja Tungide, yeah. So, Jimbalonja Tungide, that's verse 438 of the Precious Garland, but I'm pretty sure this is based on the sutras. So it's definitely found in the sutras, but in the example that is usually given is that statement. What else would it be? Which text do you have that says Janine's laptop has come about through such and such and such? I mean, it could not be any. Like, if you want to, here it's just saying it's specific, a specific action of giving its entity. So, what specific action would the Buddha have mentioned? In what scriptures would it be mentioned? And it doesn't say it has to be one that is mentioned by the Buddha. It's saying just in general. So it could be even nowadays. The Buddha hasn't talked about anything nowadays. Well, at least not Janine's laptop in that sense, right? So, well, I haven't read all the sutras, but yeah. Anyway. All right. So, with regard to the statement, from ethics, a happy migration, what is being realized is a specific entity of ethics. All right. So, maybe more specific, giving of money or something. All right. So, maybe it's not specific in the sense as like a particular person, a particular object as such, but let's say golden objects or books or something specific but still general. How do you, from that statement again, like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's easy to debate, hard to answer. I cannot give you, I have a really hard time with that particular reason, and I've never figured out. And for myself, I usually say to fully understand it, it's only a Buddha can really understand it. Maybe if you have clairvoyance, that's a different matter. There are, of course, many accounts of Shariputra and other disciples of the Buddha who had a certain degree of clairvoyance, not called omniscience, but through meditative abilities or meditative powers, they were able to see certain things, like were able to look at a person's past life and go back for a certain amount of time. Even contemporary masters, I'm 100% convinced that, for instance, Lama Zopa Rinpoche had clairvoyance, like no doubt. I mean, so many coincidences, it's just impossible. So knowing certain things, that other people wouldn't know, having clairvoyant powers. Maybe Lama Zopa Rinpoche was omniscient, but even if he wasn't, he definitely had clairvoyance. That can be, of course, and then a lama, for instance, a fully qualified lama who has these clairvoyant powers may be able to tell you exactly what to practice depending on your actions in the past that they can see to a certain degree. That's why it's so helpful to receive these instructions, because it's not out of the dark that they tell you something. But this is not this has got nothing to do with inference. I don't think I could, use this particular scripture and then know, like, no way, know that that person's karmic results or understanding what causes they came from. Okay, so with regard to the statement, from ethics to happy migration, what is being realized is the specific entity of ethics. What one avoided with respect to whom one kept ethics, the time of keeping it, the keeper, and so forth. All these can be realized only through an inference, through belief, or through testimony, as they're very hidden phenomena. Yeah, so even without talking about a specific person, as I said, gaining certain resources, they come from such and such. How could they be understood from that general statement?
But Geshe-ma,
Yes, please.
in order for you to be able to have this type of inference, you're supposedly there's like some prerequisites, right? Right? Like I remember, for example, Atisha saying that you have to know the Four Noble Truths or something like that. In order for it's not like you just believe in it and you have inference.
Wait, are you talking about this particular
Like, no, inference of belief. I mean inference of belief.
well, I mean, again, some would say yes, some would say no, right? I mean, what is the scriptural source for that?
So,
I don't know. I mean, it's for instance, like there are of course examples. For instance, the syllogism that establishes past and future lives, for instance. So, in that case, a lot of people, like when they hear about this proof, right? They learn about this, say that doesn't prove anything to me. Well, of course, because they're not the Chiduchawaduja, so they're not the main disciple of that, or the main person for whom this particular syllogism is effective. So that's important. That's important. You have to be a person for whom that, so understand the reason, the presence of this, the reason in the subject, and the forward and counter pervasions and so on. That is true. And even like, let's say it was necessary to know the Four Noble Truth, right? So if that knowledge was, I mean, how deep does that knowledge go? There's so many different layers. In fact, every Buddhist study is about the Four Noble Truth, directly or indirectly. You have the Four Noble Truths from the point of view of the Hinayana. You have the Four Noble Truths from the point of view of the Mahayana. All right, let's just look at the Hinayana point of view. So all the foundational vehicle is part of the Four Noble Truth. How much do you need to understand about the Four Noble Truth? Just knowing they exist, or knowing about the truth of suffering is the result of the origin of suffering? This is what you're supposed to realize here for the first time, independence on that correct reason, isn't it? Like, let's say this reason is posited to you for the first time, and so now you come to realize for the first time a particular type of giving gives rise to a particular type of resource. Then it's for the first time. So how much did you really know about the Four Noble Truth, especially the relation between the first and the second? Just in general, and that is slightly hidden. What is the correct reason? It's it's not wrong saying so, but it doesn't lead us away from that debate. It becomes even more complicated. So it's a great debate. If you're the challenger, it's a great debate. If you're the defendant, hmm, a different matter. Right? Yeah, so um definitely, like when that is debated, different aspects come in. Okay, you need to have this knowledge, you need to have that knowledge, but you just add to it saying how much of that knowledge, how deep does it need to go? Have you realized already that the cause, that the origin of suffering is the cause of the truth of suffering, gives rise to it, and so forth. Yes. So, and usually when you read about this particular reasoning, not much information is given. So I've certainly not in the kind of text by Benji Sodapa, for instance, at the end of the first chapter, it gives just a very general explanation, doesn't talk about you need to realize this or that. And it seems like most texts avoid to go into a lot of details, simply because it's so hard. Yeah, for so many reasons. Yeah, so right now I'm just presenting to you all the debates, and then see what, yeah, what understanding you gain from it. And in particular, if you have the time and the interest to debate it, that's a really good idea. And sometimes things become a little clearer by someone asking you and you answer, and step by step, and you hear yourself saying, okay, so maybe that is possible. That doesn't mean that there's not something else to debate again, challenge you in a different way, but at least it helps the understanding. Okay. So returning to this here. All right. So such a scripture is incontrovertible with respect to the meaning indicated by it, in that the meaning of the scripture is definite as just what it says. So you already know the meaning of that, because you already know in general that generosity gives resources, or leads to generosity, gives rise to resources. one realizes this incontrovertibility by means of a sign of belief. But do you need to realize that? You already know that from giving come resources, right? You already know it's incontrovertible. You realize that it's true, according to what Lati Rinpoche says, at least, if that's true. So from giving resources, if that is not slightly hidden, and I still doubt that, from giving resources. Although, yes, no, that is definitely clear in the text that just in general, from giving resources is definitely not a very hidden phenomenon. So if you've already realized that, why do you need to know it's incontrovertible? Anyway, from giving resources, from ethics a happy migration is incontrovertible with respect to the meaning indicated by it because of being a scripture free from the three contradictions. That is the full syllogism. I cited it earlier. So from giving resources, from ethics a happy migration. To realize the subject, how much do you have to realize? Remember, you have to realize each step, the subject, the predicate, and the sign before you can actually come to understand the presence of the reason in the subject, the forward and the counter pervasion, and so on. Sorry, this is like one of those things where I just present you more questions. It's one of those cases. But that's also a good exercise. I mean, we studied texts where I had maybe 5 questions and I left the class with 20. But that was great because I had something to debate. I had something to think about. I had something, right? And we learned to rejoice because previously I didn't have that many debates, but now I had more. So it was actually good news for us. But yeah, it depends. So don't always expect, because sometimes it's too tempting to hear something and go, okay, done, check, done with that one. But we never fully understood it. That's the problem. It's actually much better to have more questions in the end because that motivates you to dig deeper versus, oh, understood, that was easy, but that's never really true. From debating, I noticed when I thought I understood something in class, it was never what I understood after just a single debate session on the same topic. It was just very superficial. I understood the words and that was it. Okay. So the sign of belief, the reason believed in. Okay, the sign of belief or the sign of testimony. So here, the reason believed in, I wonder whether that's really what Adirambachi said. The sign of belief makes sense, but not the reason believed in. I don't think Adirambachi said that. It's just maybe the translator just wanted to make it clearer, the sign of belief. Is that the scripture is free from the 3 contradictions. Okay, that is it. It's free from the 3 contradictions. To be free from such means that the scripture is not damaged or harmed or counteracted. Remember, that was the translation used in the previous word, like damaged or harmed or counteracted by the 3 prime cognizers. So yeah, contradicted, I guess is best. It's not being contradicted by the 3 prime cognizer. Direct prime cognizer, inference by the power of the fact, and inference through belief. These are consciousnesses realizing the 3 types of objects of comprehension. Okay, but here again, if the statement itself, so from giving resources, okay, so how do I know it's not contradicted through inference through belief? How do I know that? I mean, that's the hardest. I haven't even developed an inference through belief yet. I'm about to develop one. So how do I know it's not contradicted by inference through belief? Yeah. These are consciousnesses realizing the 3 types of objects of comprehension. Okay, the manifest, slightly hidden, very hidden. Are these 3 clear to you? Yeah. Okay, those 3 are clear. Great. The manifest are those things which can be seen with ordinary direct perception. The slightly hidden are those which must be established for common beings in dependence on the sign by the power of the fact, such as liberation and omniscience. the selfness of the person, the subtle impermanence of sound, and so forth. There's still some debate.
Yes.
Yes, please. Yes, Anastasia, go ahead.
Here.
I have. It's okay. If like, how can I differentiate between what is slightly hidden and what is very hidden for me without relying on, I mean, once, I learn about specific syllogisms that are, for which I might become a correct defender without like justify, like, how is there any way to differentiate between what is a slightly hidden phenomenon, what is a very hidden phenomenon, if they're just like hidden for me?
I don't think so.
Mhm.
I don't think so. I mean, you will know about manifest phenomena. You will know once you realize that sound is impermanent, you would know that is a slightly hidden phenomenon because you realize that it needs to be realized. It depends on a correct reason because you've done so. I think for now, it's something we take on faith.
But once I have once somebody has inference on sound is impermanent, is that a manifest phenomenon for them?
Oh,
Or-
from their perspective. Well, you see, what is the definition? Take this definition of a slightly a hidden phenomenon. What is the definition? Think of the definition. Do you know the definition of a hidden phenomenon?
No.
Usually it's said that in order. Yes, anyone? Did I hear
Do you know?
someone's voice? Yeah.
I just know, well, no, I don't know it, so.
You just know it's okay. You can share with us the just. No. I mean, there are different ways of defining it, but a manifest phenomenon is usually explained to refer to something that to know for the first time, you don't need to rely on a correct reason. May it be a consequence or correct syllogism, while a hidden phenomenon in general is something you cannot know in such a way without depending. So just spontaneously know it. Let's put it that way. Kind of with the subtle working of karma, I'm still like in doubt. Okay. So for you now, Anastasia, so let's say next week you realize that sound is impermanent. So is for you sound is impermanent? Is that a hidden phenomenon? The answer would be yes, because to initially realize it, you had to realize the independence on a correct reason, right? But you could also argue, well, from the point of view of Anastasia in that moment, next week, in that moment, it's not. So it just depends how you. So you could say from the point of view of even a Buddha, well, when the Buddha first was an ordinary being, they had to also realize da 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 da. So from that perspective, you could say yes, it's also a hidden phenomenon for a Buddha. However, from the point of view of the Buddha at the time, as a Buddha, it's all equally obvious. So it just depends how you look at it. Am I making sense, Anastasia? So you can interpret the meaning of hidden in two different ways. Going back in time, okay, you had to rely on a correct reason, or just looking at it from the point of view of you then in that moment, because in that moment, you no longer rely on a correct reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
With
So it's just a matter. Yes, go ahead. Please,
Like
go ahead.
intuitively, I was just like with manifest, I was thinking like anything that is perceptible by sense consciousnesses is manifest or manifest phenomenon. But I guess there are other also more, no?
Well,
Or not?
because whatever is wherever is directly perceivable, it depends on whose sense consciousness you're talking about,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Whose sense consciousness? Again, you as a human being in this world. I mean, dogs perceive very different things with their sense consciousnesses. A lot subtler types of sounds, a lot deeper, higher pitch sounds, and so forth. So depending on what exactly do you mean? What is ordinarily perceived? What is perceivable by human beings? Okay, so whatever is perceivable by human beings, we can say in general is a manifest phenomenon, but only one way. Whatever is manifest is perceivable by, well, that's a different matter, because not everything that is manifest is necessarily an object of the sense consciousnesses. So it becomes really, really complicated because, of course, there's so many living beings just on this planet that have a very different scope of perception. Perceiving more when it comes to sound, perceiving less when it comes to visual objects, for instance, than the differences between us. For instance, like if you've reached a certain age and you can't hear well, what about certain sounds? Are they now hidden to you? You can no longer hear them. So are they hidden to you? Yeah, I guess they become hidden. So it's a very subjective kind of situation, if you like. But then no surprise, everything is subjective anything. Anyway, so we're actually moving. Tantrika, like just in general, seems to be very clear cut. But of course, they assert objective existence. If you start analyzing, things are never as clear cut. But that's all. That's the whole analysis. The moment you start analyzing a little further, nothing is clear cut. All right.
And
Yeah, so sorry. In the end, there are more questions. Yeah, go ahead.
One last question. So those phenomena that are manifest to me specifically, but that are not perceptible by my sense consciousnesses, are these necessarily things that I inferred through inference, or like that I cognized through inference, through a correct sign, or what would be an example that is kind of neither?
Well, there's not supposed to be one. There's
Okay.
not supposed to be one. That's why I said before, it's still debatable, because the main distinction is between having to rely on logic versus not having to rely on logic, being able to perceive it just spontaneously. By what mind? It's the sense objects are pretty straightforward. But then what about the sense basis, for instance, the sense faculties? Are they hidden, slightly hidden, and so forth? Okay, so they're slightly hidden, I guess you could say. Existence of other living beings, temporarily hidden, always hidden. I'm trying to think of other examples, kind of just off the top of my head. I can't think of something, but like there's so many objects that we just conceptually know. We conceptually know it. First, we understand, like for instance, understanding that someone is a person. Is that a Do you understand? I mean, you only see the shape and color of the person, and then based on that, you may have a conceptual mind thinking there's a person for the first time. So here, that's not an inferential cognizer. So you know, okay, so this is a person. The mind that I just wonder. I mean, you see, like what I'm saying. For instance, when we first saw people, we had no idea of what a person was. We had no concept of it. And so it needed to be introduced to us. And what came first? The conceptual mind understanding what a person meant, and then from now on being able to, through familiarity, also see it with your sense consciousness, right? So I really don't know. I mean, different people say different things. That's one of those things. Some would say, oh no, it's your eye consciousness saw it from the beginning. Yeah, you can say that, but to me it doesn't make sense because not every child sees that. Yeah. So this is again, there's room for debate. Very difficult to determine, and maybe also difficult to determine because everyone is different. For some, it's like that. For others, it's like that. I hope I didn't confuse you too much.
No, thank you.
Or I hope it's at least a confusion that you rejoice in. All right. Okay. Let's go back to the text. So the manifest of those things which can be very hidden phenomena are such things as the subtle features of the cause and effect of actions. Even the subtle features of how a seed grows into a sprout. There's so many subtle levels. We don't know all these levels of a seed giving rise to a sprout. It's just the same subtlety you find with karma, the law of karma, you find with anything else. of cause and effect. I mean, just on an atomic level, it's all hidden to us. Through giving resources where, very hidden phenomena, such things as subtle features of cause and effect, as taught in the scripture, through giving resources where the object given, the recipient of the gift, the giver, the time of giving, and so forth, leading to a specific resource, are all very hidden phenomena. These are accessible to inference, but only that through belief, which is so-called scriptural inference. Okay, so in the end, you don't realize it, you just believe it? Is that what they're trying to say? Okay, but then it's not a correct reason. That is not a correct syllogism because it doesn't give rise to. There's a great deal of debate, yes, no surprise. There's a great deal of debate as to whether or not a specific scripture, if it is free from the three contradictions, has to teach all three objects of comprehension. Oh no, that's a different debate. Scripture in general teaches the three types, but most individual scriptures do not teach all three. So they don't always, like, not every scripture you have teaches something manifest, something slightly hidden, and something greatly hidden at the same time. Just this one sentence here. I mean, according to Lorig, it's or not just in general, you could say it's slightly hidden. So there's slightly hidden. Okay, giving is manifest. From giving resources is slightly hidden. But then it doesn't contain something very hidden, does it? Scripture in general teaches the three types, but most individual scriptures do not teach all three. Thus, there are two ways of positing something as free from the three contradictions. One can say either that it's free from contradiction with respect to its teaching, the perceivable manifest, or with respect to that part which teaches the perceivable manifest. All right, there are two two kind of views here. There are two ways. So one can say just with respect to its teaching. So if there is a particular teaching, then it's with respect to that, the perceivable manifest, or with respect to that part. Benji Darba and Ketu Rinpoche use the first. So they say whatever is free with respect to its teaching the perceivable manifest. That's what Benji Darba and Ketu Rinpoche say. While Jetsun Chogi Gyaltsen uses the second. Jetsumba uses the second. Following the first, to be free from the three contradictions means, with respect to its teaching of the perceivable manifest, it is not contradicted by direct valid cognizers. With respect to its teaching of the slightly hidden, it is not contradicted by an inference of empirical facts. And with respect to its teaching of the very hidden, it is not contradicted by an inference through testimony or through belief. But then it has to teach all three to not be contradicted by that. And again, like Benji Daba would say, well, if it does teach them, then that applies. Following the second form, this statement would be phrased with respect to that part which teaches the perceivable manifest is not damaged by direct cognizer and so forth. Ketu Rinpoche and Benji Daba find fault with this form, so they would then debate. For they say such wording implies that a scripture free from the three contradictions must teach all three objects of comprehension, whereas this is not the case, since some scriptures only teach one of them or two of them. However, those who say that part which teaches respond that this is said not with reference to all particular scriptures, but to scripture in general. This is all right from the viewpoint of understanding, but it's rather difficult to hold in debate. So in the end, this is just really, really hard. And I guess, to my personal opinion, is this last syllogism is not a proper syllogism. I mean, it's not actually a syllogism. It can be called one. And as Lati Rinpoche says, through belief, right? I mean, I don't know whether he really said it exactly in that way. These are accessible to inference, but only that through belief. That sentence, I could imagine Lati Rinpoche did use on page 78 towards the end. These are accessible to inference, but only through belief. So I don't know. Maybe that's his personal view. You wouldn't necessarily hold that in debate. You want to keep as close to the text that you can, but it may be your personal opinion that this is actually not really possible to realize these subtle aspects through first of all, well, through clairvoyance, so certain clairvoyances, you can come to realize certain causes and effects that are hidden to us. But only really as a Buddha can you fully realize that. Only as a Buddha. But there are other texts that say anything can be known by inference. It says like whatever exists can be known by inference. I'm not so sure. Yeah, I'm not so sure. But again, something to debate. And in the end, you decide with your understanding, using common sense, and have your own opinion. Anyway, it's not like such a big deal. It's not like if you don't understand that you won't become liberated or a Buddha, no problem. I mean, it's not such a big deal. But this is huge, and I really appreciate that he put so much emphasis on this because people so easily believe you can know all this and don't question it because it's in the text, not realizing it's much more complicated than that. All right. Basically, the meaning of being free from the three contradictions. Let me just check the time. Oh, we need to leave it here. So basically, the meaning of being free from the three contradictions is if the passage teaches the perceivable manifest, so if it teaches something manifest, there is no contradiction by a direct valid cognizer. A direct valid cognizer. Okay. If it teaches the slightly hidden, there is no contradiction by an inference of empirical facts or the power of the fact. If it teaches the very hidden, there is no contradiction by an inference through belief or testimony, or a reliable testimony. For example, if it is teaching about water and says that it runs uphill, there's contradiction by direct perception. Yeah, but which scripture teaches that? Well, anyway, if it teaches the slightly hidden and says that person possesses substantial existence, okay, that is contradicted by inference by the power of the fact or by empirical facts. Yes. So on the basis of that, we know whether it can be taken literally or not. That's of course that's what Arya Nagarjuna and so forth, these great masters of the past, Arya Asanga and so forth, they looked at the teachings of the Buddha and based on reasoning, they distinguished between which teaching is provisional, which is definitive. So in the end, it comes down to our own logical reasoning. If it teaches a very hidden topic, such as saying that happy migrations arise from given, whereas they actually arise from ethics, that is damaged by inference through belief or inference through reliable testimony by another scripture which teaches a very hidden phenomenon that resources arise from giving. Scriptures which are not damaged in any of these ways are said to be free from the three contradictions. All right, so now we've done this first type. I'll definitely try to give you some extra explanation tomorrow on that, but I think in the end, there's not that much more I can add to it. The questions still remain. And the other two are much easier. The other two are much easier to understand. How much more do we have to go? Oh, gosh. All right. Okay, so yeah, I think, well, how much did we do today? Not that much. Oh yeah, we did quite a bit. Okay, I'll try and finish it tomorrow. Definitely, yeah. And then we've got tomorrow's Wednesday, Friday. Direct perceivers. Alamange. Okay. Yeah, we should be able to finish. All right. Thank you very much. Let's do the dedication.
Having thoroughly investigated in accordance with all that I have heard, day and night through the four reasonings, mind born of reflection and whose topics of contemplation, may this discernment sever all doubts.
All right. See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.